Hey everyone, welcome to the Rochford Files with your host Andrew Rochford, come to you live from the Denver area. And we are almost to the end of August. And this is nice to have a live stream ready for today because earlier in this week was kind of slow, so I didn't have enough content to provide you with a full show, a full live stream like today. Things have definitely picked up since yesterday. So overall, that's positive here. I will say that today has not exactly gone to plan, because if it did, I would have not been in the position to likely been in the position to stream right now at this time. But I'm glad but things change, and I'm glad that I've got a live stream queued up and ready to go for today. So we got quite a few things to talk about, like usual here. But before we get into one of the big stories on today's show, I like to go with something a bit different. Warm up the crowd a bit, so to speak, before I get into the more important topics. But let's get right into things today. Alright, let's start here with another issue. Is just another instance of the racism that gets thrown at Patriots quarterback Cam Newton. And this is just another one that happened yesterday. Ex-New England Patriots quarterback Scott Zolak urges Patriots to turn off rap music, says Cam Newton is distracted by it. Former Patriots quarterback Scott Zolak says his former team should turn off rap music at practice, explaining he believes the tunes are hurting Cam Newton's game. Seriously, Zolak, who played for the Patriots from 92 to 98, was reporting from Pat's practice Thursday when he made the wild claims, saying he believes Cam Newton is straight up distracted by rap songs that blare over the team's speakers during workouts. And this has to be a tweet of someone capturing the audio from that local radio broadcast.
I turn off the rap music, first of all, because I think it's distracting for Cam here. Because in between every throw, he's dancing.
I did see Karen Garisian of the Herald tweeting about that as he took the field. He's doing it in between drills, you're saying?
Yeah. He makes a throw, and then the music's still cranking. I know you can hear faintly in the background here.
I think it's distracting for you.
No, it's when I play Bon Jovi. That's like the only... No, I'm kidding. But he can't help himself to where Mac looks like he came to work again. Like, he's here to work. And everything's attention to detail. And can't, but again,
is that
style?
What I was going to say, is that atypical? That none of this sounds atypical for Cam.
Nothing different.
Yeah.
Nothing different.
Well, that's what he does then, right? I mean, so I would. It would be, to me, it would be more noteworthy if he was doing something that was out of character. Like, it sounds like he's doing all the same stuff, which means he might be first through the drills, which I don't like. I don't like at all. By the way, we got a tweet from Brady, and I think this is a good point. You said yesterday, Zoe, you would be pissed if Cam worked with the ones today.
Indeed, yes.
So why the change of heart?
Because I think they need to take a hard look at him. I think it's decision week, really. Like, just because what happened yesterday, I think you need one more look at Cam, just to say, you know what, I need confidence in my decision. I'm going to go with Mac here. I need to see that Cam didn't take the 5 days off serious, that he came out, he's still jacking around. Just looks like Matt came to work today and he didn't.
So you're kind of with me. You still think it's going to be Cam?
I do.
He hasn't lost the job yet.
Look at that. So if you know one thing about practices throughout sports is, look, rap music is going to be the preferred choice of music to play during practices. It doesn't matter whether you're liberal, conservative, leftist. That's just flat out going to be the preference across the board during practice. And this shit is flat out ridiculous. But we'll show you a small moment of footage from that Patriots practice. So this definitely isn't just an isolated thing that you could only point out Cam Newton for, and this would go for any NFL team that you look at where players may take a moment to dance during drills. And let's be real, the only people who should really be the ones determining whether this is a real issue is the coaching staff. So spare me with this outrage if you're not a coach who can actually do anything about this. Then lastly, this part of the article, which I don't consider quite as relevant, where Cam Newton talks about being surprised about Mac Jones, the other quarterback who is in competition with Cam Newton for the Patriots' starting job, his knowledge of rap music. Let's just get right to the point of this, and that is Scott Zolak using another dog whistle because Cam Newton, and it isn't the first white guy who's broke out the dog whistle on Cam Newton for not fitting the traditional labels of a quarterback here, which is your traditional pocket thrower, being a running quarterback, being flamboyant, and not fitting the traditional personality traits of a quarterback. And let's look at how Scott Zolak's career went. Let's see. He got to appear in 55 games, nearly a 50% completion rate, 8 TDs to 7 interceptions. I'd say this is a pretty mediocre career. Look, a quarterback rating where you don't even reach a good average, which is going to be roughly in the upper 70s to 80 percentile, and your rating was worse in the moments that you got to actually play more, which isn't exactly a good indictment on having a good case for having the high ground to actually provide critiques on what's going wrong with the career of Cam Newton. Because when it comes down to it, maybe if Scott Zolak turned off the dog whistles that he kept playing in his head, maybe he has a better NFL career than Cam Newton, because he's had multiple playoff appearances in a league which, by and large, if you're not among the tiny few, having a sustained track record of making the playoffs is very hard outside of maybe 3 to 4 teams. And then everyone else really just cycles in and out with high frequency, especially since only 12 teams make the playoffs in this 32-team league. So this is just another example of a washed-up career backup thinking that he has the answers, when in reality he hasn't had the success of a Cam Newton in any way, shape, or form. And this is just another example of the racism that gets exposed when they think they're the know-it-alls, when they do not have the right answers to the substantive decline with Cam Newton. There are some fair and good substantive critiques to where the decline in Cam Newton's game has come, because he's never been a beacon of accuracy, and he doesn't have the same type of mobility that he once did in his career, which means also at the same time the injuries have piled up, which leads to less running plays. But that doesn't take the whole picture into consideration with Cam Newton, which is the fact that New England probably has the weakest foundation of offensive talent that they have had in a long-ass time. So these are things that you have to take in consideration when it comes to evaluating Cam Newton, because there's situations where he could absolutely excel in with the right offensive talent, in the same way that Colin Kaepernick could have excelled in if a team actually gave him the chance. And right now, that only team who has given him that true opportunity is New England, and it probably isn't the best fit of his talent or of the ability to make him the most successful, even though there's people who view Bill Belichick as this guy who can make anyone work within a system, and that isn't exactly the full case. And Cam Newton is the victim of being caught in a team that's in transition, so that's why he's not getting like the full backing of the opportunity to succeed to his fullest. especially when Mac Jones probably is more the prototypical fit of Bill Belichick's offense that he traditionally likes to run. See, that's the actual substantive critiques that could be made of Cam Newton. Not these bullshit dog whistles. Oh, his dressing style is over the top. He doesn't speak to the press in a way that a quarterback should. He dances too much to music. That music is a distraction to his ability to succeed at this level. Absolute bullshit from people who are just letting the racism sieve through them like a major coping mechanism. And this bullshit should absolutely not be tolerated or taken as serious criticism when it comes to Cam Newton. All right, next I'm about to get into this eviction moratorium and how this is really a pretty big dropping of the ball pretty much all the way across the board. So I'll get started, go into the story short. All right, let's get going here. So last night, the Supreme Court finally ended Joe Biden's eviction moratorium order, which, by the way, is a 10% loss compared to what the previous eviction moratorium was. And this was a 6-3, pretty much down the party lines of the Republican appointed all voted to end it, while the democratically appointed Supreme Court justices all decided to try to vote to protect it. And this is, once again, pretty much, before I get started here, this is just the basis of what the right likes to do here, is doing right now is deciding to try to finally help landlords when, in reality, landlords are probably the most entitled of the capitalist class, and they have been probably the most vocal whiners about how they haven't been able to kick people out for not being able to pay during the whole duration of this pandemic. So next, we gotta go into this from a right to left in terms of firing criticisms out. look at this. The right is actually celebrating the fact that all these people are about to become homeless in the coming days. Imagine how that's a winning message. How are we not able to win against a message of a bunch of right wingers celebrating this because landlords finally get to kick out people who haven't been able to pay, and also celebrating what they don't realize is real estate sharks like BlackRock are just gonna swipe up all these upcoming homes that are about to be vacated due to these evictions and make the homes further unattainable to the people who previously were able to have those. Do you not have a message that outwins that? Because this whole justification is just a pro-capitalist type of bullshit here, where you know that the capitalists are finally having an opportunity to try to make that one group in their class that has been disaffected and hasn't been pleased in the same way that other people, many of whom are richer than some of your landlords, to be honest. This is not to say that we didn't know that his outcome wasn't going to happen, because this is the type of argument that a liberal would make. Is their focus is being outraged on the Supreme Court, then wagging their finger at people who wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. Yes, those takes are coming out of the woodworks again. When I'm always on the basis of blaming politicians for when politicians fail to get people to vote for them. And that's why I'm no longer for that finger wagging at people about the Supreme Court. And let's be real here. I still was stuck in liberal mentality back then. However, finger wagging at people is not the way to get people to get more people on your side. So next, this is why we are focusing, me as someone on the left is not focusing my blame on the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court was going to do this regardless. And this is why I blame the idea of progressives and the squad sycophants of praising the squad members like Cori Bush, AOC, and the others who spent those short few days at the Capitol towards the end of last month staging a protest. And the problem with that, as I've pointed out, is the fact that they decided to rest on their laurels and settle with this. As you saw, Frank Analysis, when he went down to provide on-the-ground reporting, along with others like Max Blumenthal, they were the ones trying to pressure the politicians and to demanding the evolving steps of their plan when it came to doing more than this. You remember when Cori Bush and AOC, they were announcing this news that the eviction moratorium was put back in place for 90%, which, by the way, leaves out like left out 1.1 million people still. If the local community deemed fit that their area was not seeing a outbreak and rise in COVID due to the Delta variant. And that right there allowed homelessness to triple. And guess what? With this, with the action that you're not hearing about right now, it looks like homelessness is going to go up at least 10 to 11 times more than what it was before the Supreme Court stepped in. I knew that it'd only be a matter of time before this would happen again. And this is why it was important to pressure Cori Bush, AOC, the Squad, and other progressives on their plan and their actions to take beyond this. And we all know what happened once this announcement took place. They decided to take their ball and go home. Effectively, they decided it was really good enough this was good enough. And you know the negative consequences of this. Because of the fact that Squad members like AOC, Cori Bush, decided this was good enough and to go home. You know what that meant? They, in a way, sabotaged a more evolving outcome when it comes to this eviction moratorium, not only trying to cover the missing 10%, but actually getting rent canceled. Because once they left, Capitol officers kicked the rest of the people who wanted to be there and wanted to make this turn into more and push them further away. And we know this because one person who was there said the Capitol Police allowed them to be there because they were guests of the Representatives Bush and AOC. And what we saw also is the crowd never really grew beyond what it was, because there would be moments where a bunch of people in the electoralism progressive network would show up, and these would be the times where you'd see the biggest amount of people at the Capitol steps. But then once all the politicians who were there to try to ramp up good PR all left, then you saw the crowd really dwindled, and it was a significantly smaller crowd. And even though some of the people there are more in agreement with the electoralism type of ideas, they are at least there to strive for more. With the leftists, who are about trying to work outside of the political system and build a power structure completely independent of that. And there are people who feel like they need to they can't let go of the electoralism in the same way that others do, but they're at least more supportive to the ideas of building outside power, because when you think about it, how is the system going to allow you to build that from the inside? But before I jump too far off into a tangent here, we've seen that progressives remained pretty much silent on the building steps here. And I pointed out that back in the beginning of this all, this really AOC and Cori Bush, I feel like they lucked their way into taking this extension into overtime. And based on what they've said, I really did feel like they tried to use the proper back channels in a way that makes them look naive, when what they really needed to do was use the bully pulpit a lot sooner in order to do this. And we also noticed AOC called us on the left, who weren't happy to accept this, negative Nancy's. And this is exactly why. Because as the squad members and other progressives refuse to give us the transparency to give us any type of trust into what they're doing. And when they got interviewed about stuff like forced to vote, and the amount of deflecting or staffers stepping in to protect them isn't the way to rebuild trust with this activism left that is really feeling disenfranchised by the work that has been done since the Biden administration has taken office. And what you see from the squad sycophants and progressives is that they're smearing us as unreasonable and having a bias of constantly trashing them. Look, yesterday I uploaded a video giving a bit of proper praise for Ilhan Omar asking for Daniel Hale to be pardoned, but I also offered further steps that needed to be done in order to make sure their action evolved beyond a strongly worded letter and tweeting, because that, in essence, has been the brand of the squad to date. And this homelessness issue is about to blow up tenfold. And it really feels like they had no fucking plan. We asked them, Franco that is, what's your plan to get rent cancellation? We'll take care of that later. That's why I'm not convinced that I can take them seriously or trust the plan as the elite managerial left likes to put it. And this right here is going to be a major problem. And when you get left out to dry by politicians who refuse to take help activists from the inside, you get shit like this, and you also are left to fight the battle on your own. Because even with states who are getting the funds to actually cover the overdue rent that is built up over these several months, what is happening is the states are hoarding it, or you'll see in a moment what happens in other instances. But overall, this is the problem with this. I said that this was the establishment loved this because this was I think there are people who believe that regardless of whether this sit-in, this camping outside of the Capitol steps happened or not, that they were going to probably, whether it's Joe Biden or Nancy Pelosi, they were going to find a way to extend that moratorium irregardless. But they had an opportunity to leverage a way to try to sheep herd the left back into the squad and continue to string them along in this abusive relationship with the Democratic Party. And that's why AOC and Cori Bush, among others, got to be the baby faces who were able to stage this performative act in order to get this result, which only led to a temporary kick of the can down the road, which isn't going to lead, which right now has all of them back on their heels, falling off of the top of the fucking crate pyramids and landing solidly on crates, because that's the type of... The crate challenge is a great way of putting how the squad's fight and strategy has looked since Joe Biden has taken over as president. They can get halfway up there, but then they fumble strategically and they fall very hard. And this to me is like when a basketball game goes in overtime. This extension was like their team getting on that quick 4 or 6 point run. Then the other team calls timeout. But the problem is they shut it down, then lost. And they're not giving us any indication that they have any way of trying to turn this around and get a win. Because what we do know now is the only path forward is through Congress. And is this even going to gain enough traction to, you know, work its way through the budget reconciliation or the infrastructure package, which, by the way, the reason why I haven't spoken much about that package is because it still has to go through the Senate, and some of these things that supposedly the SQA and other progressives are holding their leverage on is probably may not even be relevant by the time things get changed in the Senate. But those are two obstacles that they're going to have to work it in through, one way or another. So that's the problem here. Do they have a plan to push something through the House to try to help people not be homeless? If they do, and if the substance of what is in their bill to help people out is mostly good, I'll give them the proper credit for that. But if they don't have the plan and they can't work it into the infrastructure or budget reconciliation, then it's just another instance where they're throwing away their opportunity to use their leverage. But let's get into this recent clip from the Majority Report. And this with Sam Cedar and Emma Vigilin, who are doing what the elite left managerial class likes to do, which is punch down on activists and pretty much telling them to check out from this.
Do agree with the idea that what Cori Bush is doing is performative, and that's the only assessment.
This is for lasers. You gotta take it
Okay,
off.
I will.
Yeah.
It is time for you to go. Leave us now. This is not for you. There's something far stupider out there for you. Go get it.
Go
There
get
you go.
that stupid.
That's right.
Reach for that stupid.
Honestly, seriously, like,
But don't try to screw in a light bulb, but reach for the stupid.
in the absence of Cori Bush sleeping on the thing, nobody would be talking about this anymore. Nobody. It would just disperse into, it just disperses into thousands upon thousands, 10,000s, hundreds of thousands of individual cases that have no sort of solid voice. These people who complain about the so-called performative nature of what is a performative act, like, to sleep out on this, it is performative.
Yes,
But you know what?
it's a
There's
political
nothing-
action. That's what all
Of
political
course.
action is.
And it's not all
Wait,
political
no, you know what was
actions, but it
performative?
is.
Them going outside of AOC's closed office to protest. But this, when she actually has power and has experience as a houseless person, and when there's something that can be done about it immediately
Yeah,
with the
she-
CDC,
there's
with
no-
the federal eviction
yeah.
moratorium. I mean,
There's
come
no
on.
other. She's using the only tool that she has, and it is effective to the extent that it's like driving attention and forcing the White House at least to pay attention and sit in the White House and figure out, like, how can we fix this? They may not. I just want.
This is why we are starting to call them the Sam Cedars, the Emma Vigilins, Anna Kasparian, Cenk Uygurs of the world. The real dumb left. Because This is fake, smart bullshit. And as I've pointed out, I've even covered up my own whole when it comes to the arguments of performative. And that to me is, there's a difference between performative actions that have a actual build up to substantive results, or a performative action which is just leading to a dead end. And I initially felt like this was one of those performative actions that led to a dead end, but I feel like I was at least slightly wrong in that aspect, because it did at least, it could have led to a build-up of a better overall result than what was previously in place. And these are the type of this is the elitism that you're getting in place. And tell me how this is going to help you build an actual left-wing movement to transform the United States, when you tell people to fuck off and let the smart people do the work. Because if there's a reason why the left loses, it's because of fucking shitlibs telling people that they don't like to stay out of this, in addition to what their sabotage is involved with, calling people that they feel are to their right the bad right-wing labels, Republicans, maggots, racist. Tell me how this is building a coalition. Because when you're effectively weakening your own coalition, the same type of projection that you get from people who try to frame us as the dumb left, when in reality it's these people that are the real dumb left. We're the ones who are actually trying to get enough people from the right within to win on the margins, in addition to trying to bring back the disenfranchised people who probably would support the left if they felt there was anything left to support, which is the non-voters. And those account for roughly 33% of our potential voting population. And when you tell people who you disagree with to go away, how is that gonna build a coalition with those traditional non-voters who even had a hard time coming around to the idea of getting on board with Bernie Sanders in the last two presidential primaries? Once again, much of the stuff that the TYT Majority Report type of left they accuse people to their left of is stuff that they're far more guilty of. And these people are deeply unserious about building real coalitions because they fearmonger over any type of outreach to the right. They try to obfuscate or actively hurt organizing efforts such as Medicare for All. They're still caught up. They try to pose themselves as being anti-mainstream media. But how the fuck can you do that when you're also on fucking Peacock? You fucking clown. And the mainstream media is always going to be against us. So that means the only way forward is to fight. The reason why the left hasn't been able to get more success other than just a few elected progressives who, by most indications, are turning into liberals and are using all the same type of liberal talking points and the identity politics shields, which is because we are losing the messaging battle because we aren't about doing the things that need. We aren't making the effort to make establishment people sound extremely unreasonable. If progressives continue to run on the idea of trying to capitulate to your more conservative voters, you're going to continue to see further more losing than not, like in the way that people like Nina Turner and Bernie Sanders have ran their campaigns. If we turn our campaigning, even though we're down on electoralism, we still have to ask the progressives who try to run better campaigns, even without the support, the financial support. And it's because a big reason is we aren't framing in the mainstream political establishment as unreasonable. It's a battle that we're not winning. And if the more and more that framing gets flipped on its head, I think that's where the campaigns are going to improve. And let's be honest. Fortunately, that's going to require framing as yourselves as centrist while saying that everyone else is the far-right extremist. And we really got to nail that point home, that anyone who's part of the Democratic establishment, they are far-right extremists. And the more that future progressives hammer home that point, I think that would override this whole far-left radical messaging that they haven't really combated well enough. But the point is, this is part of why the left loses, because these people actively sabotage events, even if they don't believe that they're going to work. They kill the coalition building, weakening out turnout. And I pointed this out with my video on the Hassan Piker house, is the fact that he fearmongered over the mainstream media as a reason to ignore this event, when these people have so many liberal viewers that they could easily, even if they promote an event that they don't agree with, they increase turnout. So that's the most frustrating part, is they narrow the tent for the coalition for themselves, and they narrow the tent for the coalition for people to their left. So that's why this managerial left is a problem. And 2 weeks from tomorrow, there's going to be a few cities across the country that are going to have this event called End the Damn Wars. And while I'll probably do a more substantial promotion probably as soon as next week, and once some organizing names get organizers for the Denver event, to be specific, get released, then I will try to get them on as guests to promote the event, because one of the big things on the left is the anti-imperialism. And before I shift on further into this eviction moratorium, is the other problem with this TYT majority report type left is the fact that they have more of an indifference to imperialism. That means they may have rhetorically similar type of messaging at times as we do, but they also let the squad and other progressives off the hook for when they coordinate their votes to allow more funding to continue the wars on like Israel and Syria and whichever other several countries that the United States is pushing sanctions over. But I don't want to get too straight away, because I'm eventually going to talk the further Afghanistan fallout to close out. But let's shift over for a bit. This comes from Jen Rice. Yes, there's a CDC eviction moratorium in this country right now, but I just met a Houston couple who filed a CDC form, got $7,000 in rent relief. Their landlord received it, but decided to return it and evict them anyway. Then Child Protection Services took their baby away because they were unhoused. since they've been home most of the time during the pandemic, they've literally never been apart from their 18-month-old for more than an hour or so in their whole life. They're going through unspeakable trauma. The irony that there are commenters who think it's impossible for people to lose their child this way, when the reason why this couple's friend decided to call CPS in the first place is because she thought they were lying about getting evicted because there's an eviction moratorium. How fucked up is that? And too much. This is missing far too much from the discussion, is the fact that this is still, evictions are still happening in spite of this moratorium, and they just aren't getting talked about enough. I know Conrad Misty, she mentioned she had spoken of instances or they're happening in her city of Columbus, Ohio. And this, while I think there has been a bit of attention being brought to states hoarding these funds, what's being ignored too often is stories like these where their landlord decided to refuse the rent relief and evict him anyway. This is why we can't trust the landlords to do what right. These scumbags are gonna do what they want if you don't put regulations in place to prevent this from happening. And this is why things like these are part of the ask that needed to be made when it came to the fight for building on this battle of trying to get rent relief. Because one point that I kind of ignored, I forgot to point out when it came to that Cedar and Vigilant clip, was the fact that they pointed out how this stopped getting talked about. And it's not, and they try to accuse it to be the fault of the people to their left, but it really is the fault of the squad for letting it happen. Because the moment they left is when that energy towards getting more done went down the tube. And these stories just flat out aren't getting enough attention. And we need to make sure that we demand that these people get included. That way they don't get the rug pulled out from underneath them if other things were to get done. And that's an important aspect to keep in mind with this story right here. And this is definitely really sad. And these are the type of things on the margin which are probably going to inflate homelessness a bit more than you expect. And these are the type of aspects that you need to take into consideration when it comes to covering this topic. And we know that in the coming days, you're probably going to see videos on social media showing people getting evicted, and just have to use those to motivate more strongly motivated actions, as opposed to sitting on their hands and casually going about trying to come up with a solution. Because even if they manage to get another moratorium back in place, there will still be people who have fallen through the cracks in this period right now. And once it turns September, in a few days, you're going to see it ramp up once again. So let's continue to put the pressure on. And the important thing when it comes to being on the left is making sure no people fall through the cracks, and not taking finger wagging from people who consider it okay to let a small percentage of people go through the cracks, because we should always be fighting to make sure that doesn't happen and not accept anything less. Because I'm about shifting the Overton window and not settling for anything less than that. Because the moment where you become complacent is the moment that they stomp on that weakness. But even if these people manage to get a bit of extra time and survive in their home, guess what? How many jobs anywhere, big cities, medium, and small alike, are you going to have the opportunity to make $25 an hour just to afford a one-bedroom apartment? And guess what? I believe Denver is in the 8th most expensive state in the country. And even though I feel like the majority of jobs right now are at least $15 an hour or more, but guess what? I've been saying this for a while. The job market does force people into certain jobs. So, for example, there's still going to be a lot of people out there who struggle to, as a couple, to earn $25 an hour combined. And what we don't take into consideration is this $25 an hour to just barely survive? Or is this slight breathing room, but it's still a struggle? These are things that these type of stories don't often give you enough information on. And the reason why it's important to point this out is, even though, yes, based on my recent research, I think jobs are starting to tick back up a bit, or somewhat. And I am sensing that there are employers who are definitely acting more aggressively to fill positions. But what we don't realize is there's always been a struggle to find jobs, and that struggle has existed since the 2007 recession. And that even once these extra benefits get kaput, they're gonna still have problems, and depending on the area where these people are, there's still gonna be a lot of people who struggle to make $25 an hour combined. And yes, even in states where your minimum wage is still in that $7 to $8 range, it's still going to be a major problem. So this is the next step here. And once again, part of the things that you have to take in consideration, because there's no indications of pushing a $15 minimum wage or any type of minimum wage increase as a whole, because I do have a feeling that there's going to be once Republicans take over again, I would not be surprised if they passed a increase of $11 to $12. And to your normie voter, that's going to look really terrible when the Democratic Party could not even manage to do that. And this is not me speaking from a left perspective. That's me putting in norm. Oh, sorry about that to those who just got disconnected from the stream. Before I continue further, I have to get the new link out to people. Alright, so this is the Rochford Files with your host, Andrew Rochford, and I was on the idea of why being able to afford living is so much higher than the wages that most people are able to make at work. So I gotta get this other link shared, the new link to the YouTube stream shared. Before I go any further. So, lastly, I just wanted to say that this is part of the problem with this. This is connected to the eviction moratorium, because if people are, if the best job that they can get is minimum wage or just barely above it, then it's only going to be a matter of time before they get evicted, because the Biden administration has largely decided to ignore the moratorium. I mean, the COVID, and the fact that they're flat out refusing to have a serious reaction to this, because we're on an upward trajectory with the Delta variant, and their response is to just vaccinate and ignore. Even though vaccines tend to help with more aggressive actions if you choose to do it, but I still understand people who aren't ready to choose these vaccines and even have skepticism, even though the FDA, still continue to hold their skepticism in spite of the FDA now approving them. But the point is, we have to work to fight for the connected issues as well, because that's going to be another thing I gotta rant about a bit, is the fact that the squad censored discussion on connected issues, such as imperialism sucking up the funding that can help make housing a human right in this country. And that's and this is an example of why we can't allow this is an important and why there's just all our issues are connected together, and even if we, and why it's not a good idea to discard the fight for other issues, even if you don't view it with the same importance as others do, because I've noticed this lately with Julian Assange. There's a lot of people on the left who are trying to discard the importance of the Julian Assange issue, when that could very well be a major blow to a free press, which is needed. And even if you don't view it as important as many of these class issues, to me, it's still a glue. It's like a player that's on the glue of a sports team. It's an issue that's absolutely essential, and if you ignore and if you don't have the right glue players in place, then you don't win a championship. And that to me is what the Julian Assange issue is like. Even if you drop it down the priority list below other things, but without having that as part, if it's not a contributing role player type issue, then you're not gonna win on the other more important issues. And that's the point I like to make towards these recent Assange people who are trying to downplay, even if you don't view it as one of your most top important issues. And if we let that slide, then there's going to be liberals who are going to use the opportunity to do the same with other class issues. Alright, so this is a video from MSNBC. They just did an interview with Lieutenant Michael Byrd that shot the Trump supporter Ashley Babbitt during the Capitol riots. But the problem is, you're going to see, I'm about to get into some of the issues with this interview. But I'm going to play the video first before I get into reacting to that.
Your name has been battered about on the internet, but you've never been officially, publicly identified. Do you want to tell us who you are?
My name is Michael Byrd. I'm a lieutenant for the United States Capitol Police.
For months he has lived in hiding, he says, over this moment. His decision to use deadly force against a rioter as she climbed through a barricaded door that leads to the House chamber. In the months since, he's been the target of threats.
Could you give us the nature of some of those threats?
They talk about, killing me, cutting off my head, very vicious and cruel things.
Racist things?
There were some racist attacks as well. It's all disheartening because I know I was doing my job.
Given the nature of the threats that you describe, do you have any concern about showing your face and identifying yourself?
Of course I do. That is a very vital point, and it's something that is frightening. I believe I showed the utmost courage on January 6th, and it's time for me to do that now.
Responsible that day for securing the House chambers, Byrd couldn't see what Americans were witnessing on their TVs, but he could hear it in the pleas from other officers.
Were you afraid that day?
I was very afraid.
What are you hearing on your radio?
I'm hearing about the breaches of different barricaded areas, officers being overrun, officers being down.
Did you ever hear a call or a report of shots fired during any of this?
As a matter of fact, I did. There was reports of shots fired through the House main door onto the floor of the chamber.
Later, those reports would prove to be false. This video captures Byrd instructing members of Congress to don gas masks. He says officers barricaded the door, what he considered the last line of defense.
I had been yelling and screaming as loud as I was, please stop, get back, stop. We had our weapons drawn. There's a gun!
Byrd, only his hand and gun visible, targeted a figure trying to climb through a window. He fired a single, fatal shot hitting Ashley Babbitt. She was 35 years old, an Air Force veteran, Trump supporter, and QAnon follower.
We see your arm out there for a considerable amount of time. Were you wavering?
I was taking a tactical stance. You're ultimately hoping that your commands will be complied with, and unfortunately they were not.
When you fired, what could you see? Where were you aiming?
You're taught to aim for center mass. The subject was sideways, and I could not see her full motion of her hands or anything. So I guess her movement, caused the discharge to fall where it did.
And what did you think this individual was doing at that moment?
She was posing a threat.
Our request for a comment, but in a previous statement said Babbitt was not brandishing a weapon, not in close proximity to members of Congress, and was not an imminent threat of death or serious injury to anyone.
Her family points out that she was not armed.
That's correct.
The fact that you weren't aware whether she was armed or not, did that alter the decision making?
It did not.
What should we make of the fact that there were other officers in other potentially life-threatening situations who didn't use their service?
I'm sure it was a terrifying situation. I can only control my reaction. That would be upon them to speak for themselves.
Former President Trump has talked about you and this incident. He says she was murdered. What does it feel like to hear that from a former president?
Well, it's disheartening. If he was in the room or anywhere and I'm responsible for him, I was prepared to do the same thing for him and his family.
Would you have his back today if you were so assigned?
I sure would, because it's my job.
Multiple investigations have now upheld Byrd's actions on January 6th.
Capitol Police in their press release after exonerating you said your actions potentially saved members and staff from serious injury and possible death. What was it like to hear those words, to see those words?
Those words meant a lot because that's exactly what I did on that day. That was my mission. That was what I prepared for. And it's rewarding and refreshing to hear that.
First off, let me just start off by saying that I think it's absolute bullshit that only a black officer has to be able to justify their actions. And if you're going to make him, Lieutenant Michael Byrd, do this, then I demand the same for all those other white officers who shoot unarmed black men. That's, if you're going to establish this standard, then, and when it comes to January 6th, what's not going to be talked about much in the mainstream agenda is the fact that, let's be real, Capitol officers let this happen. That doesn't mean that there weren't some who were trying to prevent anything, but this was self-induced. This is why